Are you tired of living a life you don't love? Do you crave more and find the pathway elusive? Well, welcome to the Intuitive Coaching Show with me, Ruth Wilson, the Intuitive Coach, and Dr. Pat, as we begin to discover your unique personal magic and easy steps to create that life you love, that life you crave. As a life coach, certified hypnotherapist, and intuitive, I am passionate about helping you tap into your intuition and learn to work with your inner resources to use your energy to create a life you desire. You don't have to be positive, stuff your feelings, or spend lots of time and money on self-development, because during this show, we'll show you the how and why. Ready to turn crave into brave, desire into inspire, and catapult your life force full steam ahead in the intuitive coaching way? Call in, write in, plug in. The Intuitive Coaching Show starts now.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Pat. I get to take this journey with the most incredible coach, intuitive coach, Ruth Wilson. And so, Ruth, this is a really important show for a lot of reasons. And, let's talk about what all these people have in common: the Spielbergs, Einstein, Tesla. As a matter of fact, Dr. Wayne Dyer talked about magic so often and intuition. There's something that they all have in common. And what is that from where you sit? Because I know this is something so important that today we need to help people understand that they can tap into this too.
Well, they all used intuition, but especially used intuition to guide their lives and make important decisions. They used intuition to find to discover new things. They used intuition to guide their lives in ways that they would not have found out with their intellect. And since we talked about this, I have found more and more people that fit this bill, like Nikola, who left the outward journey group to take care of her son, or Amber Tamblyn, who used to play Joan of Arcadia, who's writing about intuition now. So they've all used it to guide their lives in ways we think they're geniuses. But I wonder, are they really geniuses, or are we all geniuses, but they learned how to follow that genius guidance of their intuition?
Yeah. I mean, we often wonder this, but we can see the results. It doesn't matter who you look at. You can go as far back as you want. You can look at Walt Disney, and what made him make major decisions to point him into the Walt Disney we know today. But let's start out by talking about this idea of magic. I mentioned that Dr. Wayne Dyer, not only Dr. Wayne Dyer did an entire series on it, but also Dr. Porter, when he created the Brain Tap, talks about tapping into this, talks about magic, intuition, and imagination. So let's talk, what does it mean? So that people get, this is not something that a few people do. We do this every day, average everyday people.
Yes, we do it every day, but most of us are not encouraged to. What it is going beyond the intellect and using the subjective mind and using the whole mind, the external and the internal intelligences, the unconscious and the conscious, this inner and outer. And we're not encouraged to go inward these days at all, especially with social media. We're always looking out at the landscape, and inside is where the special wisdom is. Inside is where the magic is. Inside is where you live with your own special gifts. And not all of us are encouraged to produce our own special gifts. And in fact, we're pretty much encouraged to fit in. But we all do have it. We've all been guided by things where we just couldn't take a certain decision because of the way we felt. It's a lot to do with feelings, but it's a lot bigger than feelings.
So if we all have these abilities, right, there's some people that make them work for themselves, the people we've mentioned, but then there are others that don't. Why are we not all in the place of the Walt Disneys of the world, of the Wayne Dyers in the world?
Well, I think, as I said, we're not encouraged to be. We are encouraged not to use our imagination in school because it disrupts the program, and that's fine. But we need to use that imagination. A lot of us are encouraged to look outward, but then every once in a while you find somebody who processes differently. And in my experience, a lot of times the person who is dyslexic, like Spielberg, has to rely on their inner wisdom maybe more than the rest of us. And so they learn that there's a gold mine there. And I think for some of us, like my personality is an intuitive personality. I just kind of had to use my intuition from the get-go. I'd like to think I'm really special, but it was just something that to survive, I had to use it. And I found out that, oh, this works really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times we get labeled lucky or we get, we have these things that people see in us, but sometimes we just out of the get-go know that if nothing else works for us, and usually what I find interesting about the people we mentioned have been classified in the world as, let's just say, learning different or different. And what I mean by that is ADD, dyslexia, learning different, speech problems, whatever that is. And so when the normal things fail you, you go to a place that won't. And there's just that natural essence that's allowed to come through and help. But, there are some people that say thought is everything. Facts are everything. Follow your logic. Logic is the way to go. If it's not logical, it doesn't work. But we're not saying throw that out the window, are we?
Not at all. Intuition comes from a different place than logic, and it's hard to prove. It's impossible to prove, and we don't really understand it with all that we've studied it. But usually I have found that when you come up with some kind of intuitive solution, it makes a whole lot of sense. It's hardly ever crazy. It might be a little different than what you're used to thinking, but it usually makes sense. And when it starts playing out and you find out that the intuitive solution really worked, it makes so much sense. And people will say, how'd you ever figure this out? The answer is, I didn't figure it out. It came to me through intuition.
So let's just have a conversation about this for a minute because I want to encourage people about this for two reasons. Children get it until they're told not to get it. Okay, does that make sense, that little question I did? Children get it. They get it at a very, very young age. Now, why do we know that, Ruth? We know it because nobody says to a child, crawl. Let me show you how to crawl. There are just some things you watch an infant do, and you have to ask yourself, how the heck did they do it? Some people say it's natural instinct, but so is intuition. And so let's talk about what happens sometimes when we stop using our intuition. And this idea of, oh my gosh, you did that intuition and you failed. Now you're like, okay, don't do that again. That was a bad guess, right? So let's talk about how we understand why sometimes things happen that we've done everything right, but we come to a particular fork in the road that seems, let me just say, it seems like a failure. But I got to tell you, for me, Ruth, it is not. Every pothole I've stepped in, every failure quote that I've had, everything that didn't happen the way I want was not a setback. It was a setup. What is your thought about this and why people sometimes say, I'm done?
Well, we get this idea, I think it's a popular idea now that if we're just positive and we follow our intuition, everything will be just fine. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes we can't follow our intuition because we don't know what it is, or we believe something that isn't helpful, or we are being kind of bumping into a wall that's telling us to go the other way. And it can really be difficult to see what that is when it's happening. I have had personally the weirdest last 2 months of my life.
I know.
If I didn't use intuition, I would be so upset. And it's already kind of upsetting, but I can look at it and go, no, I need to see something here. Something I'm doing isn't working here, and something I'm doing over here is telling me to do something different than what I've been doing. And so intuition can be a really good guide in that way, but most of us aren't trained enough to really know. It's not even easy for me, and I've been studying this all my life to see, well, is this guidance? Is this something that I believe that isn't helping me? Is this something I created that I should not have created and I need to uncreate it and start somewhere else?
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of times we just don't know what to do with it, but it's always talking to you. It's always telling you something wonderful, really.
I want to talk about this in more detail. We're talking about the idea that sometimes failures can be good. I really want to dig into that. But then there's also this conversation that, don't difficulties signal we're on the wrong track? But let's talk about that, because what does it mean when you fail to experience what you want? Let's have a conversation about this. Now, can I just add a word in there? When we perceive to fail, because that's the way it feels. Me being rejected by 35 universities, except for one, seemed I was failing because I wasn't focusing on the one that put me on the waiting list, which ultimately was the one I went to. All I had was, I'm failing, 35 rejected me, right?
Right. Guidance.
But the number one school I wanted to go to. And, I've had my coach say to me, Pat, you should have quit after that school. Why did you send it out to 35 other schools? But these are the things we have to help people with. This idea of failure, and it's perceived. What does it mean when we fail to have the experience we want? And again, I say perceive to fail. We're having the experience. What does that mean? How does that infect us?
Well, it trains us to believe that we didn't get what we wanted because of something wrong with me. And the truth is, there's some right things with you that are just playing out. And many geniuses like you applied to a lot of institutions. Talking about Spielberg, his early work was not an unconditional success. He was not always liked, and he continued to persist because he was driven by this dream. So that's part of it. And part of it, I think, too, is that a lot of times we need to, and this sounds kind of puritanical, and I don't mean it to, but sometimes we need to grow. Like some of the weird things that have happened to me recently, it's like, oh, I needed to know that.
Yeah.
I did not realize that I had programmed my life to be that way.
Right.
And so now that I know, I can change it, or I can work with it, or I can accept it better. And I think the thing that's lacking in this success failure question is the notion that, you're just fine the way you are. You are a genius, just like Spielberg, just like Oprah. And you're seeking ways to express that. And some of those ways are going to work, and some of them are going to take a couple of tries.
Look, let's snatch a couple of things from the headlines right now. Right now, you know what? Somewhere in my brain, I always wanted to be a track and field star. Clearly, my body doesn't move. But Ms. Richardson, who now is considered to be, I think she is considered to be the fastest woman on the planet. Years ago, she could not qualify. She had an awful thing happen. She was disqualified. What did she do? She came back, crushed the 100 meters. I mean, literally crushed it, makes the Olympic team. I watched all that. Simone Biles. I got to watch the gymnastic trials for this upcoming Olympics. Simone Biles, everybody wrote her off. She's like, oh my gosh, she's like so disappointing. At the last Olympics, she's back. So you see, but what is she back? She's back. You know, it's interesting when I watch Ms. Richardson, I like to call her. You know, what I love about her when she's interviewed, she says, I'm not back, I'm better. Let's take that and talk about how these experiences can now change us, but how intuition and coaching, and by the way, when you hear Simone Biles talk about, I do a couple things. I go to get help over here, I get help over here. Richardson, I get help over here, I get help over here. But they're not doing this alone. So let's talk about how you take these situations, and that's just two. Those are just two. But how do you now get the kind of help so that you can hone in on your intuition so that you know how to bounce back, so that you know how to understand how to plan your future? That's intuitive coaching.
Yes, it is. And intuitive coaching involves a lot of basically support. The same way when something weird happens and you go to your friends and ask them what they think, going to an intuitive coach is a similar sort of conversation, except that the intuitive coach knows intuition. So I'm able to help you manage your feelings, and that's really key to creation, uncreating things you don't want. I help you align energies so that you're aligned with what you want and not what you don't want. I help you find some of the unconscious things that are going on and bring them to the surface so that you can deal with them and see your inner wisdom. So there's some discernment that another person can help with when you're trying to figure out what is it I'm doing here anyway. And then we also work to balance intuition with rational thought. And I shouldn't stop before saying that. I'm quite a rational person, in spite of what my family says. And I can help get a bead on what is the intuitive idea, and is it rational, and is it going to work, and what do we do practically to make it happen?
But more than that, one of the things that I want you to really address is this thing that we don't address. And that is that when we step out and we are working with somebody to be coached, there's also this thing called witnessing. And what I mean by witnessing is without somebody saying, yes, you're on track, that is the way to go, you're kind of floating around wondering, what am I doing? Am I right? So there's this level of trust and confidence that you do not have on your own, especially after a setback, right? But isn't that also what an intuitive coach helps you do?
An intuitive coach, and every coach helps do that. Yes, I saw that too. And furthermore, I saw this other thing. Or yes, that did look that way to me. And furthermore, here's another side to it that you might appreciate more. Here's the good side. Here's the silver lining. Here's what you might do with that. Here's how you might use that experience. And also to take our biases out of it. That happened to me because nobody likes me. And no, that's not why it happened to you. It happened to you for some other reason. And we can work with that instead of something that doesn't empower you.
But this is the key to what we're saying. You know, left to our own history, emotions, I can't even imagine. I honestly cannot even imagine how Simone Biles did it. I really can't. You know, when you watch that, and I'm watching also another athlete, Caitlin Clark, you know, come from just horrific lack of support out there in the basketball arena and just come back over and over and over again and not quit. But when we're talking about things like sports, like career, like creativity, 10% of it is perspiration, 90% of it is inspiration. And that inspiration comes from that imagination and intuition. Isn't that what we're talking about? I mean, I don't care who you look at. It could be Taylor Swift, or it could be a mom that I talked to last week, raising her children and saying, we've got to honor mothers. How do they come up with it? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that that's why athletic people are such good examples when we're talking about coaching, because they're the most open to accepting different kinds of coaching, because their whole world is about physical coaching. So when other kinds of coaching, like mindset coaching, come along, the athletes they're really the front runners, no pun intended, with using the mind to get ahead. And I think that it's really something that other areas in life don't necessarily understand. I mean, I know when I was working in the corporate world, nobody ever encouraged me to get a coach for years and years and years. Later, in more recent years, it's become more accepted, but that was what we all really need, is that support.
You know, in the end, there's a message here, and I want to make sure that you bring this home. And that is, I'm not saying that we can't do it alone. I mean, I have a multitude of coaches, but I know what it's like to do it alone. I would have never gotten through my doctorate. And I'm not just talking about a coach. I'm talking about a coach that would say something like, I'm kind of getting, let's try this out. For those of you that think the word intuition is too much for you, Ruth's going to bring this home, but I want to tell you this. Imagine this. You're sitting in front of Dr. Carolyn Grandrose, and you're trying to figure out what the heck you're going to study. Your entire education is based on what she's about to say to you. And she says, wow, you're studying something never been studied before. But I have a feeling that you should really extend it to study that. What is she talking about? Like, what feeling? You're an academic. You're telling me you got a feeling? I mean, honestly, you're hearing what went through my mind when Sherry said this to me. I have a feeling you should add this. I'm not kidding. This is the way it went at my dissertation defense. 3 of these people were arguing, and you could hear them. We really think, we have a sense she should do this. We have a sense she should study now leader-member exchange. All of that, and these are intuitive coaches, because nobody was saying, well, the data shows. You see what I'm saying? This shows up every day in our lives. I don't care if you're driving a truck. I don't care if you work for Amazon Prime. You use something that we have made so stigmatic to use, and yet it's magic. Bring it home, Ruth.
Those feelings, those senses, those ideas that come from seemingly nowhere are the ones that you need to listen to the most. And that's what makes some of us magic. And that's what keeps some of us from becoming magic, is we don't accept that, or we don't learn how to work with it. So, life doesn't give you a lot of opportunities to go within, but that's where all the good stuff is. That's where the magic is going within and learning to use your inner wisdom. If you don't like intuition, call it inner wisdom. It is magic. It does allow crazy magic things to happen. And anybody who wants to work with me on it, I can help you.
Yeah.
You can call me for an energy check. I can tell you where you are, or you can get a short course in how to use this. Or some people contact me monthly just to coach them in whatever it is they're doing. I even have an intuitive contact me to see if her intuition is jiving with my intuition. Those are a lot of fun.
It is. And you have to ask yourself, I mean, for those of you, think about the people in your circle and you see what they're doing, or the people that you admire, or maybe the people you follow on social media, whatever that is. You have to ask the question, what was going through Rihanna's mind when she trademarked her surname, Fenty? What was going through her emotional, intuitive state when she took something that was so in her heart, brought it out to a mega brand, and created a line of products, right? That literally catapulted her, to what is now known as ultra beauty stores and $1 billion celebrity. So how does somebody like a Rihanna go from being a great pop star, singer, amazing award winner, to getting an idea to do this? You see, I don't know if she called on her intuition, but I would bet money she did.
Even if she didn't, it was there working.
It was there working.
Get driven in certain ways, and we either accept them or reject them. And sometimes we think, boy, how did I know to do that?
Exactly. And isn't this what you're talking about? But even more importantly, Ruth, I've had a lot of help along the way. And I can't tell you how many times I've had what I call an intuitive hit and gotten feedback from somebody that literally put up a wall for me. See, that's why you need to work with an intuitive coach, because an intuitive coach will help you move beyond what people tell you you shouldn't or you could not do.
Right. Right. Because that inner wisdom is all the information that's really important to listen to.
So how do we find out more about you? How do people work with you, Ruth? And I would love to know your closing message, because, you work with people across the globe. We now have remote ways to work with people. How do people do that?
Okay. The best way to reach me is at ruth-wilson.com. And there you can sign up for an energy check. We'll take up to a half an hour to look at where you are and how you're doing, and see how I might help. And you can sign up for other services too if you're ready to do that. But I assure you, whoever you are, the world needs what you have to offer. The world needs your gifts, and I'm here to help you bring your gifts to the world. I have spent a lot of time figuring out my gifts. You don't have to. Maybe I can help you speed that process up. And the world needs your gifts, whoever you are. And you need to be the genius you are. You need to be the genius you are.
Everything from coaching to consulting to helping you with your business, your personal life, it doesn't matter. All of these things that we are in the world are touched by our intuition. So why not harness the power of that? Ruth, thank you so much. What do you want to leave us with? Final words?
Just that the world needs your gifts, and you need to trust your own very real magic.
I love it. I'm Dr. Pat. Thank you, Ruth, for everything. And for those of you out there, sometimes it doesn't seem logical, but I don't really know what in the world actually is logical, including math. So until next time, have a great, great rest of your day.
Thank you for tuning in to the Intuitive Coaching Show with me, Ruth Wilson, and Dr. Pat. Tune in and watch next time for easy steps for creating a life you love. Every first Thursday of the month, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time, 2:30 Eastern, on transformationtalkradio.com, to turn crave into brave, desire into inspire, and catapult your life force full steam ahead the intuitive coaching way. Discover your inner magic and how easy it can be without censoring yourself or spending years on self-development. Move toward what you desire right now, the intuitive coaching way. For more information, connect with me visiting intuitivecoach.info.